I want to introduce to you now is called the one-line model. It has several names, but I think this is the easier to remember. One-line model. It's a very trivial one. It's an elementary model, which I think it is useful to gain a preliminary understanding of what's going on. So the one-line model assumes that the beach moves back and forth parallel to itself. So, in this case, if you have erosion, the beach just moves back by keeping the coastline parallel to itself. Parallel is not really a good term because parallel can only be referred to straight lines, but I hope you understand. Basically, the profile of the beach doesn't change. It's just shifted back and forth with the same slope of the beach, because here we are looking from the top and we are looking at only the horizontal plane. We are not looking into the vertical direction. So, when we look at the vertical direction, we have to specify the slope of the beach. So not only the beach profile is kept, is conserved, also the slope of the beach is conserved. If you make this assumption, and you know what is the volume of sediments that is mobilized, you can understand, you can compute this delta. Let me call it, I think, epsilon. I'm not sure, because I'm now going to show you the figure. It's delta epsilon. So if you look at that figure, you can see that you have delta epsilon. You have, first of all, a spatial step that is called delta y. I call this delta x, so don't be patient with me, okay? But it's the same thing. The spatial step is the direction. You see that you have a Q in and a Q out. Q is sediment volume rate. And the yellow part is the volume, the difference in volume of sediment. It can be accretion, it can be erosion. And once that you know the volume of the yellow part is geometrically defined, with the only exception of delta epsilon. So you can compute delta epsilon, delta epsilon, or delta c. This is xc, delta c. You can compute delta c by just knowing what's the difference between Q in and Q out. The geometry of the yellow volume is already known because it's given by the coastline and the slope of the beach. Keep in mind that in order to make this computation, you have to fix a closure depth, which is the depth of the beach where you close the sediment balance, which is something like a couple of meters usually. Because when we talk about a beach, we are not talking about very profound seas. The sea depth is usually very limited, and therefore the closure depth may be like a couple of meters, maybe 3, but not much. And this is the one line. It's very easy to compute. If you make the assumption, for instance, that the slope of the beach is a straight line, and the beach is a straight line, this becomes basically a triangle or a rectangle, and a rectangle becomes a rectangle, and it is a rectangle that is given by the product of, basically closure depth times delta c. Not really closure depth, but once that you know the closure depth and you know delta c, you can compute this area here. Because you know the slope, you know this angle, and therefore you can compute this area, you know delta y. The only unknown is delta c. Is the concept clear to you, or do you have some doubts? This is a very simple approach. Yeah.
Could you repeat that example how the wave fits the coastline and then the erosion and the accretion of the sand?
Okay. And before I repeat this, is it clear how the one-line model works to any of you? Or should I try to make to draw it on the? But let me. Is it clear or not? Okay. And then I can make an experiment later. Instead of drawing on the blackboard, I can try to draw over here, but it's not so easy. And also, this is not my PC, so I'm not sure what kind of drawing program I can find it. Anyway, let me repeat this to answer your question. Basically, keep in mind that we know how to compute the sediment transport rate in terms of volume, okay? So for each of these steps, I can compute it. And in that, there are differences between values. So when you get a huge transport here, and you enter into a zone where, for the change of direction of the coastline, alpha gets close to 0, you have a reduced transport. So if you have a transition from high transport, reduced transport, it means that here you have accretion, which means settlement of sediments, deposition of sediments, and therefore the beach moves seaward.
In which case alpha goes to 0?
This one, because not 0, sorry, 90 degrees. 90 degrees, yeah. Because it's, I got a bit confused because you can define alpha in two ways, as the angle of the breaker line or the angle of the wave direction. Is it clear to any of you? I defined alpha as the angle, the acute angle between the breaker line and the coastline. So when the wave becomes parallel to the coastline, you have no transport of sediments, and our alpha in this case is close to 90. The breaker line is here, so it's close to 90. Is it clear to any of you? So now the example is clear.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
This was the...
I perfectly understand. Yeah. Okay. Next week, not next week, but next lecture, I aim to make a practical exercise of computation of the evolution of the coastline. You will see that first consideration is very easy. In R, it's very easy to make this computation, once that you have, of course, the input data, wave direction, etc. First consideration. Second consideration, you will see that this model is a bit unstable. So sometimes you need to play with the parameters, otherwise you get unrealistic outputs. Unrealistic because, you know, everything is changing very quickly here. So if you move from one step to one delta x to the next one, sometimes you have a big change of sediment transport, like it may happen in this case, because it gets close to 0 here, and here instead it may be 45 degrees, the wave. So you have big changes, and these big changes are not realistic, because actually in the real world you have smooth changes, not sudden changes. And when you introduce the numerical model, a sudden change, sometimes you get this coastline that gets here, and suddenly gets here after 1 hour, which is not realistic. And therefore the beach profile becomes a mess. So the moral of the story is that you have to reduce delta x, you have to reduce also the time step of computation, which means that the energy flux is reduced, and therefore also the increments in sediments, sediment ratio is reduced. Like in any numerical model, you have the time step and spatial steps that need to be minimized, otherwise it becomes unstable. In this case, it's particularly subjected to instability because there are very heavy assumptions here, like movement of the beach that is parallel to itself, beach profile that is unchanged. But still, it's an interesting, I think it's an interesting example to understand how people study beach evolution. And also, the lecture that will be done by Gabriela Gaeta, she will focus on a more complex model. So we will make an experiment with the one-line model, and then you will see another application with a more complex model. And keep in mind that, beach morphodynamics is a key issue. It's something that is really relevant because you can put into the model the protections. And therefore, it's an aid to support the design of beach protection structures, like seawalls, the structures that we spoke about, like breakwater, because the breakwater changes the direction of the wave, changes the behaviors of the wave in general, wave height, so it changes the flux of energy. And therefore you introduce in the model these changes. Also, you can put replenishment here, because if you see that here you have an ocean, you can decide to make every year a replenishment or nourishment of sand, and then you suddenly put into the model an input of sand, and you see what happens. And you can study what changes are suggested to the beach profile in order to get the best result. And of course, in everything that you do, there is uncertainty, which means that one-line model, a lot of uncertainty. If you deal with a more complex model, uncertainty is potentially reduced, not necessarily, potentially. Because if you have a more complicated model, we say that the model is more precise, is more detailed, but maybe less robust. Okay? What does it mean, robustness? Robust. What does it mean, robustness? Well, we say that the model is robust when we expect that the model is not really precise, but it's not deadly wrong. I think you understand what I mean. If you increase model complexity, unfortunately, you run the risk that it becomes deadly wrong. Because complexity means that you need more information to run it. If you introduce additional processes, additional changes, potential changes, you need more information on geometry of the beach, wave behaviors. So why sometimes we adopt the ideal scheme of single plane wave, instead of admitting that several wave forcings may interact, because the scheme of single plane wave is more robust. It's not really precise, we know that there is uncertainty, but we expect that it's not deadly wrong. But of course, this is an assessment that you have to make based on your practical application. Should I use a more complicated model or a simple one? And in any case, what is uncertainty? You have to gain a kind of sensibility in what information is needed for doing what kind of model I can use. And this sensibility, you gain it through experience, which doesn't translate, not sure if I already mentioned this kind of reasoning to you. Experience doesn't mean that you are an old guy or an old girl. Okay? Experience just means that you took the time, the energy, and the effort to try to understand. You can gain experience by going on the web, looking at YouTube videos, etc. And this is something, how to deal with uncertainty, how to choose the optimal model, that is very difficult to teach, because it's something that goes beyond what is theory and exercises in a university course. It's something that requires you not really learning additional and theoretical information, but gaining an understanding of how theory connects to reality. And this is something that is difficult to teach. beach. Of course, we can make field trips, but you understand that we cannot spend a semester, or maybe during an internship you can do that. But we cannot spend a full semester by just looking around. It's something that I give you the input, but you have to start by yourself. Okay, and I think that we now can move to cross-shore. I will adopt a completely different approach because I will just mention to you a couple of empirical relationships. And then I will just make a descriptive treatment. So don't be concerned, cross-shore sediment transport will be much easier for you to follow. And I just want to give you an idea of how things go on, how the beach can evolve qualitatively from a qualitative point of view under cross-shore sediment transport. I want to give you, after this qualitative idea, a couple of empirical relationships just to get an example. Empirical relationships that are not to be learned by memory. What you should try to understand is what is reported here, these schemes. Just one second. These schemes that I will discuss with you. Because it's, as I said, a qualitative idea of how the beach profile evolves. Now, let me say, first of all, I already mentioned to you, and keep in mind, different time scale. Cross-shore sediment transport evolves in a much shorter time scale with respect to a long-shore. A long-shore is a long-term process, while cross-shore is short-term. Okay? Keep in mind this because it's a first important thing that you need to put in your background. So let's see what happens when, for instance, you have a storm. A storm, so short-term process, and so it means that the storm implies big waves. Before I move forward, let me give you, just remind you, how we define wave behaviors. We usually make reference to the 1/3 highest. So we get observation of waves. And when we want to define or characterize the behavior of extreme waves, we usually use as a reference the upper 1/3. So I have like 30 observations, I have much more, like 30,000. They are observations in time. These observations are called a time series. When you have observations displayed as a function of time, depending on time, we say that we deal with a time series. Okay, now, let's suppose that the time series is 30 observations, usually it's many more. Then you put them in descending order, you rank them in descending order, and the 10th one is the upper 1/3, is usually defined as a design variable, the upper 1/3. Okay, this is usually, because this is something that you may hear from people like, okay, the 1/3 wave is 2 meters high, and one doesn't understand what does it mean 1/3 wave. It means that, what I said, so the upper 30%. Okay? Now, there is a theory for studying the extremes. So sometimes you may hear people talking about return period. I'm not going into the details, okay, because it requires a lecture, and I don't want to dedicate a full lecture to extreme value analysis. Extreme value analysis applies to earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, and waves in general. So extreme value analysis is essentially a statistical tool, very easy to manage. So don't associate statistics with something complicated, quite the opposite. When we talk about physically based models, they may be very complicated. Statistics is in general very simple. It's the language that is difficult for an engineer, but it's just a matter of language. And again, keep in mind, extreme value analysis. If you don't know it, I suggest you that you go on the web and you take a quick look. Okay? And I may also suggest you, if you approach me and tell me, look, I never heard about extreme values, and I give you a couple of suggestions. I have a couple of web pages not related to this course, but to another one, where extreme value theory is well explained. Keep it in mind, because I think Professor Archetti did it, so I decided not to do it. But I know that not everybody of you attended the course of Ocean Engineering with Professor Archetti. So keep in mind extreme value analysis, okay? And I just wanted to make a mention to the fact that sometimes it happens in the ocean, and this is quite a unique feature, that you may get a single wave that is a monster wave. It's also called rogue wave. I'm not sure the pronunciation is correct, my pronunciation. It's spelled in this way. There is a link in my webpage to describe this kind of monster that may happen. They are also called freak waves. This is something that you will not have to do with, because, but I think it is interesting to mention that sometimes it happens that you get a single wave that is exceptional size, and they are unexplained. It is very rare. When they happen, they can be very problematic even for large, very large ships. And probably some people say that they may be given by the interaction of several different waves, that at a certain point they superimpose each other for just one single phase, because you know the waves they have different phases and they may compensate each other. Sometimes, very often, they compensate each other. A wave going up compensates with a wave going down. But if you have a single instance where several waves, for just a matter of chance, they superimpose each other in a positive way or negative way, you may get a single monster. And it may be a current wave that superimposes with a wind wave, etc. But this is interesting. It's something that is really fascinating by the oceans. Of course, it's more risky for the oceans. If you get a closed sea like the Mediterranean or the Adriatic, we never heard about monster waves. But in the ocean, it may happen. It may happen. And it's something that we don't consider, because, you know, if you consider such a very exceptional occurrence in your design would be too much oversized. And they are defined as a wave that has an amplitude that is at least twice the average of the upper third. So it's something exceptional. You get the upper third in your time series, you take the average of the upper third, and suddenly a wave occurs with an amplitude that is twice, at least twice that. And there may be 30 meters. In the ocean, there have been reported monster waves of more than 40 meters. Okay, let's go back now to our scheme. Sometimes, you know, I like also to try I like to speak about what are the mysteries of what we are studying. There are several mysteries in environmental sciences, and it's fascinating. And it gives you the feeling that we cannot control everything. It's impossible. Complete safety is impossible, like for earthquakes. So we have recordings, etc., but sometimes we get monster earthquakes. Okay, so what happens if you get a storm? From a previous profile with a well-defined berm, runnel, and dune, remember, this is the berm, this is the runnel. The runnel, you may have some water there, and this is the dune. So you get a storm, the berm is destroyed, the dune is affected, and the sand is brought back into the sea. And then you may have a long-term process that pushes it back. I want to show you a video which I think is very nice. And it's linked in my webpage, just one second. It's here. Did I close? No, it's here, sorry. And let me open another window. So we are here, just one second. Okay. Okay. So this is a lab experiment. Let's read the description of the video. And it says, the description is reported in the video as well, but let's read it first. The first part of the video is 2 hours in the lab of waves with, I think it's a wave height of 12 centimeters with a period of 1.3 seconds. Numbers are not important, just for comparison. These steep waves produce large destructive forces. Destructive, it's intuitive what it means. Okay? On the beach slope, the beach response is to flatten out because it's destructive. And does this by slowly eroding the berm, the dry portion of the beach. The eroded sediment is then transported offshore. We are talking about this. And built up as sandbars. Sand continues to erode, flattening the beach until the wave machine is stopped. The wave period is then changed, and the height kept roughly the same, but producing longer, more gradual waves. These waves lasted 3 hours and 15 minutes and were more or less the same height, but with a longer period. Okay? These longer period waves produced more constructive forces, which result in the sand from the bar being transported in a ridge and a random system on shore. The sand from the bar is transported back into the beach, producing a creation of the eroded shoreline until the beach face is back to the original, wider, steeper profile. So let's see the video. And I'm not sure whether there is some advertisement. Let's see. Okay, this is destructive. You see the formation of the bar. The beach is eroded and the bar forms. Of course, the video is accelerated, so you don't see the waves because it lasted 2 hours and it's compressed in 10 seconds. Now you will see the wave force changing. This is still destructive. You see the sediment, okay, now the wave forcing is changed and the sand is brought back. And the beach reaches its original slope. This is constructive. By just changing the wave period, this is in lab. Okay. I don't know what is this. Let me see. Maybe it's interesting. No, it's too long. It's 11 minutes. But as I said, it may be useful for you to have a look at these videos. And, most of them, I have to say, are not as interesting as this one. This one is, I spent some time trying to look and to identify interesting videos. Most of them are just descriptive, just saying, look at what's going on here, there is a lot of vegetation, or not very technical. when I say something technical, you understand, this is what I mean to be technical. This is very technical, because it explains really what we are studying. And if it is descriptive, like the next one, I think it is descriptive. I just looked for 2 seconds, but they started by looking at a global map, and then some videos that they are looking around, not really technical. Okay. No. Okay, here we are. Okay, so this is what you saw happening in the lab. Okay, good. Now, what happens if I increase the sea level? Something similar. You get an erosion of the berm. And this is a case that is interesting because, you know, there is a lot of attention today on increasing sea level. We will have a descriptive lecture on climate change because I think it is too fashionable today to ignore it. Fashionable, I would like to say it in a negative way, meaning that climate change is over attention today, but given that it's over attention, I need to give you some more detailed information. So you will see that, for instance, sea level rise is something that is in the order of magnitude of 15–20 centimeters in the past 150 years. So people talk about meters of sea level rise. This is something that may happen. In the past, for sure, we had such changes in sea level of meters. But if we look at the past 150 years, when anthropogenic climate change is supposed to have had an effect, we are talking about 15–20 centimeters, depending on the location. So it's something that is, up to now, it's over attention. Of course, it may happen in the future that it becomes an issue, but up to now, it's relevant for saltwater intrusion. We study it, because a change in 10 centimeters in terms of saltwater intrusion may imply an intrusion of 100 meters more. But from the point of view of beach morphology, it's not up to today, I mean significant. But in any case, this is what increased sea level may cause. By the way, I found these schemes on the web and I withdrew them because they were copyrighted. But if you look on the web, Short Sediment Transport, you find much nicer figures, which are similar but nicer. And this is what happens if you adopt beach nourishment. So immediately after nourishment, you get a situation like this one, and with a profile that was previously eroded, otherwise you wouldn't put back the sand. And then after a while, there is an equilibrium profile that evolves in this way. You know, there is a beach slope. You see that the beach slope here is close to the beach slope in the previous situation. The beach slope is a behavior that is intimately related to wave forcing, behaviors of sediments. So basically here the moral of the story is, okay, you put some sand there, and what you obtain is the one-line model, basically an advance forward, seaward of the beach by keeping more or less the same profile. If you put a seawall, you have to expect, again, a movimentation of sand with the development of a hole, a scour, a local scour at the top of the base of the seawall. So we have to be careful, because sometimes the seawall, you know, what is the reaction of environment when you put a structure? The reaction is to remove it, because it's very clear. When you intervene, it's because there is something that you don't like, but it's a situation that developed according to some forcing. If you change that situation, the forcing continue to act, and their action in the long term is to remove the structure, because it's something that is not compatible with the forcings. And therefore, you know, if you put a seawall, you have to be careful, because you have to expect that the waves tend to remove it. And the way they remove it is by excavating at the base of the wall, so you can perfectly understand why this profile is in this way. Because here there is erosion. Because it's the tendency also when you train rivers, sorry if I make example to rivers because it's the environment that I know better, and you put some river training there, the action of the river is to remove them. Of course, but not because the river doesn't like it. It's just a matter of physics. Okay, and then let me see. Oh, I think it's okay. Now, here, let's go into the details of several criteria have been proposed to determine empirically when erosion prevails on the position in terms of cross shore. And this is a bit problematic because along shore, we developed a criteria based on physical reasoning. It's a balance of sediment. In this case, it's more difficult because we are talking about something that comes from offshore. We have limited knowledge. The beach is something that we know quite well. We can characterize quite well. But when we talk about offshore, what is the sediment, the transport of sediment from offshore? It is limited, of course, but there is some transport of sediment. And so this is an empirical criteria to determine very empirical. So your uncertainty lamp should become very, very lightened here. Because, you understand that if you look at this equation, basically what does it say? It says that you have equilibrium meaning no erosion, no deposition, when this relationship is satisfied. Okay? If you have the left-hand side prevailing, it means that you have erosion. If you have the right-hand side prevailing, you have deposition. But look at the independent variables. Okay, so let's look at the variables. H0 and L0 are wave height and length in deep water before breaking. Okay, much before.